Listen, before you skip this, before you tell yourself this isn't for you, before you convince yourself you're fine, that you've got it handled, that you don't need to hear this, I need you to stay. Just for a moment, stay. Because I almost didn't make it to this moment. Not in the dramatic way people say that, not the car crash, not the diagnosis, not the thing that makes a good story at a dinner party where everyone nods with sympathetic eyes and calls you brave. No, I almost didn't make it in the quiet way, the invisible way, the way where everything looks fine from the outside. Actually, it looks incredible from the outside. And you are standing in the middle of all of it, completely, utterly, devastatingly hollow. That's where I was. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays always felt the most like lies. Mondays at least have the energy of intention. Wednesdays have the midpoint momentum. But Tuesdays are just existence, just forward motion without feeling. And I was standing in the center of an office I had built, looking at a wall of glass at a city I had conquered in every metric that the world told me mattered. And I felt nothing, not sad, not empty even, not the romantic kind of empty that poets write about. It was worse than that. It was the absence of absence. It was a void so complete that I couldn't even locate myself inside it. I pressed my hand against the cold glass and I thought, who is this for? And no answer came. I built a company before I was 30. I built a reputation before I knew who I was. I built systems and structures and revenue streams and morning routines so optimized that I had color-coded every hour of every day, and I was proud of that. I told myself that discipline was love, that achievement was proof, that if I could just keep building, keep climbing, keep stacking, keep proving, then one day I would arrive somewhere that felt like enough. I built the morning routine. 5 a.m. cold water, the journals, the supplements, the workout, the meditation, not for peace, but for performance. Everything for performance. I built the external architecture of a man who had it together. And what I didn't know, what nobody tells you, what no productivity system covers in its premium tier, is that you can build a perfect life for a version of yourself you've never actually met. I thought discipline was strength. I thought needing nothing from anyone was power. I thought the man who requires the least is the man who can give the most. I thought if I just optimized hard enough, I would finally feel like I deserved to be in the room. Wait, before you scroll, I know you know this feeling. I know you're not scrolling past this because it doesn't apply to you. You're considering scrolling past this because it applies too much. Because something in the first 30 seconds of this touched a nerve you've been avoiding since the last time someone asked you how you were doing and you said good without hesitation, without honesty. Don't deny it. I'm not accusing you. I'm standing next to you. I'm showing you the inside of a man who looked exactly like someone who didn't need this conversation and who needed it more than he needed anything he ever built. Here's what I learned about achievement, and I say this as someone who worshipped at its altar, genuinely, completely, without irony. Achievement is not the enemy. Ambition is not the problem. Drive, vision, the fire that wakes you up before the alarm, none of that is wrong. None of that needs to die. But I had confused achievement with identity. I had made productivity the proof of my worth. And without realizing it, I had constructed a version of myself that only existed in relation to output. Removed the results, and there was no man standing there. There was only a function, a machine, a very efficient, very lonely machine. And machines don't know how to be loved. Tell me something. When was the last time you let someone sit with the real version of you? Not the version that's got the plan. Not the version that's already 3 moves ahead. Not the version that deflects vulnerability with humor or wisdom or the pivot to, anyway, enough about me. When was the last time you let someone be in the room with the part of you that doesn't know? The part that's afraid? The part that lies awake at 3 a.m. doing the math on whether any of this is actually worth it? When was the last time you let someone love what's underneath the performance? I'll wait. She didn't come into my life at the moment of my success. She came in at the moment of my fracture. And I want to be careful here because this is the part where stories like this go wrong. Where the woman becomes the magical solution, the prize for finally doing the work, the warm light that saves the broken man. That's not what happened. That's not who she is. That's not what I'm telling you. She didn't save me. She didn't fix me. She didn't arrive with answers or with patience infinite enough to absorb my damage. She arrived as a person. A full, complicated, real present person who simply refused to pretend with me. That was the thing. That was the terrifying, disorienting, life-altering thing. She wouldn't pretend. Everyone in my world had learned to interact with the version of me I curated. The capable one, the decisive one, the one who already knows the answer before you finish the question. That's the performance. And it's convincing. I had been doing it so long that it had stopped feeling like performance. It had just become the only mode I had, and she sat across from me at a table I don't even remember choosing, and she said something so simple that I almost missed how completely it undid me. She said, "You don't have to do that here." I didn't know what she meant at first. I asked her, and she just looked at me, the way someone looks at you when they see you more clearly than you see yourself, and she said, "The thing you're doing, the performance, you don't have to do it here." I didn't say anything. I didn't know how to not do it. I had been doing it so long I couldn't locate the off switch, but she waited. That's what presence is. It's not the grand gesture. It's not the speech or the gesture or the declaration. It's the willingness to wait, to stay in the discomfort of someone else's process without filling the silence with your own agenda. She had that. She had this extraordinary, quiet, unshakable capacity to just be there, not performing patience, not enduring me, just there, present, real. And I didn't know what to do with that because conditional love is what I had learned. Look at me for a second. This is important. This is maybe the most important thing I'm going to say. Conditional love is not always taught with cruelty. Sometimes it's taught by the most loving people in the world who simply didn't know another way. It's taught in the gap between the praise you get when you win and the quiet that falls when you don't. It's taught in the pride that shines in someone's eyes when you achieve and the worry that clouds them when you struggle. It's taught in I'm proud of you being tethered always to something you did. You learn, without being told, without a single harsh word, that love is earned, that you are acceptable in your achievement and uncertain in your failure, that the self that produces is safe and the self that suffers is a burden. And so you produce. You produce and produce and produce. You become extraordinary at producing. You build empires of achievement on the foundation of a child who just wanted to be enough without having to prove it. I built that empire. I built it on that foundation. A foundation not of rock, but of fear. Of deeply embedded, masterfully disguised, perfectly rationalized fear. Fear of being known, not the surface known. Not the I know what you like for breakfast and how you take your coffee known. The real known. The kind where someone sees the gap between who you perform and who you are, and they stay anyway. That terrified me. That was, if I am being fully honest with you, the thing I had structured my entire life to avoid. Because if no one gets close enough to see the real thing, then no one can reject the real thing. And you never have to find out if the real thing is enough. Here's what I learned about the prison of having it together. It looks like strength. It looks like the thing everyone admires. And people do admire it. They come to you with their problems because you always have the answer. They defer to you in the room because you always have the direction. They trust you because you never show uncertainty. And you feed on that, not with arrogance, with relief, because as long as they need the version that has it together, you don't have to introduce them to the version that doesn't. But here's the truth that the prison hides. The people who are drawn to the performance are bonded to the performance, not to you, to the function of you. And the day, and there will be a day, when you can't perform, when the system breaks, when the result doesn't come, when the answer doesn't arrive, when the strong, capable, decisive version of you has nothing left to give, those people don't know what to do with what remains, and you will be alone in the collapse. I know this because I have been alone in that collapse. She stayed when I stopped performing, when I ran out of answers and out of direction and out of the forward momentum that had been my only language for my entire adult life. When I sat with my hands on my face in the particular posture of a man who has run every calculation and arrived at no solution, she stayed. She didn't fix it. She didn't minimize it. She didn't tell me it would be okay in the hollow, cheerful way that people use to make discomfort leave faster. She sat across from me and she said, I see you, not I see the plan, not I see the comeback, not I see the man you're going to be when you pull yourself out of this. I see you, present tense, exactly as you are. Do you know what it does to a man who has spent his entire life performing to be seen without his performance? Do you understand the particular terror and the particular relief of that? It's like being a soldier who has been at war so long that he's forgotten what peace sounds like, and then someone sits him down in a quiet room and says, you can put down the weapon, and his hands shake. Not from weakness, from the shock of being allowed to rest, my hands shook, not literally. But in every way that matters, everything shook, and I had a choice. This is the moment no one talks about, the moment that actually determines everything. Not the rock bottom. The rock bottom is easy to dramatize, easy to make cinematic, easy to turn into the inciting incident of a transformation story. No. The real moment, the invisible moment, is the one right after when someone offers you the truth and you have to decide whether to receive it or retreat. When someone sees past the performance and extends presence, and you have to decide whether to let them in or rebuild the walls faster than they fell. I could have retreated. I almost did. I know the retreat. I am fluent in the retreat. The retreat looks like sudden decisiveness. Right, well, I know what I need to do. Let me get back to work. And it sounds like strength, but it is the oldest cowardice there is. I chose differently, not all at once. That's the lie that transformation stories tell. The sudden complete change, the montage, the new man fully formed from the ashes. That's not what happened. What happened was a Tuesday, and then another Tuesday, and in between those Tuesdays, a series of tiny choices so small they barely registered. I chose to put my phone down when she was talking, not because someone told me to, not because I read it in a relationship book at 30,000 feet between meetings, because I genuinely, for the first time and longer than I could remember, wanted to hear what she was saying more than I wanted to process my own thoughts. That was the first brick. I built things with bricks my whole life. Structures, systems, empires. I knew how to lay foundation, how to stack, how to construct things that would last. But I'd never understood that the most important thing I would ever build was not the company, not the portfolio, not the reputation. It was the home, not the physical home. The home inside myself, the place where I could live without performing, where I could be known without fear, where the gap between who I am in public and who I am at 3 a.m. was small enough to sleep inside without suffocating. I had built the empire. I had never built the home. Here's what I learned about the collapse, and I want you to hear this. Really hear it. The collapse was mercy. The collapse was the kindest thing that could have happened to a man who would not have stopped otherwise, because I would not have stopped. I was wired for forward. I was optimized for more. I had engineered every system of my life to remove friction from the path of achievement, and I would have kept going efficiently, productively, impressively, all the way to the end of a life I had never actually inhabited. The collapse broke something open, and in the breaking, there was an invitation. The emptiness wasn't a destination. The emptiness was a door. And on the other side of that door was the terrifying, humbling, ultimately life-giving work of asking, who am I when I am not producing anything? Tell me something. Who are you when you're not producing anything? Not who you're becoming, not what you're building, not where you're going. Who are you right now, stripped of your output, your plans, your momentum, your metrics? Who is standing there? If the answer scares you, I understand. It scared me. If the answer is silence, a long, uncomfortable silence full of uncertainty and discomfort, and the particular vertigo that comes from identity built entirely on external scaffolding, I understand that too. That silence is not a verdict. That silence is the beginning. She taught me presence without trying to teach me anything. That's the thing about real love. Not the romantic construct, not the fantasy, not the projection of every wound and wish onto a person who has their own wounds and wishes. Real love is not a curriculum. It doesn't arrive with lessons. It arrives with truth. It arrives with the willingness to be honest about what it sees, and the willingness to stay while you figure out what to do with that honesty. She would tell me when I was retreating, not with accusation, with precision. You just left, she would say, and I would be physically present, sitting exactly where I was, and she would be right. I had gone somewhere inside myself where no one was allowed. Some control room of the psyche where I managed everything from a safe distance, behind glass, watching the world like a performance I was directing rather than a life I was living. Come back, she would say. And I would have to relearn actually, because I think we all know this before the world teaches us to forget. How to come back. How to drop down out of the management of experience and into the experience itself. How to stop narrating my own life from the position of the observer and start inhabiting it from the position of the participant. This sounds abstract. It isn't. It's the most concrete thing in the world. It looks like this dinner, with the phone in the other room. Not because the phone is evil, but because I choose what gets my attention, and I choose her. It looks like the conversation at midnight that I don't cut short because tomorrow is full and I need sleep. Because this conversation is the point. Because this, presence, contact, the real thing, is the empire I was actually supposed to be building all along. I built the life before I understood what a life was for. I built the productivity before I understood what productivity was supposed to serve. I built the strength before I understood that the strongest thing a man can do is not to need nothing. It's to be known completely and stay anyway. To let someone see the fear and the failure and the 3 a.m. math and the hollow Tuesdays and the moments when the glass reflects a stranger. And to reach out your hand and say, I'm here. I'm in this. I don't have an answer, but I'm not going anywhere. That's the strength I never had. That's the strength I'm building now. Here's what I learned about asking for help. Asking for help feels like confession when you've built your identity on competence. It feels like heresy. It feels like the thing that will finally confirm the fear you've been running from, that underneath all the achievement you were never quite as solid as you appeared. But here's the truth that lives on the other side of that fear. No one was ever fooled. Not the people who know you, not the ones who sit across from you at the tables that matter, not her. They were never watching the performance and thinking, yes, this man needs nothing, this man has no gaps, this man is exactly as complete and certain and invulnerable as he presents. They were watching the performance and waiting for the moment you'd put it down, waiting for the invitation to meet the real person, waiting to offer what they had always wanted to offer, which is not admiration of your function, but connection with your being. Asking for help is not the crack in the armor, it's the opening in the wall, the bricks. Let me come back to the bricks, because transformation doesn't look like a monologue. It looks like bricks. It looks like the day I sat with something difficult without immediately reaching for a solution. It looks like the conversation where I said, I don't know, and let the I don't know exist without being embarrassed out of the room. It looks like sitting still, actually still, not the stillness of meditation optimized for cortisol management, but the stillness of a man who has decided that this moment, exactly as it is worth inhabiting. It looks like looking at her across a table and feeling. Not the pride of what I've built or the projection of what she represents to my future or the strategic thinking about trajectory, just the simple, staggering human reality of another person looking back, present, real. Here, look at me for a second. This is what I want to say to you. You can keep building the way you've been building. You can keep optimizing the mornings and stacking the wins and presenting the performance and managing the impression. You can keep the walls at the height where no one gets to see over them. You can keep mistaking the silence for peace and the control for strength and the distance for protection. You can keep building the empire and never build the home. And it will look impressive. It will genuinely look impressive. There will be metrics that confirm your progress. There will be moments of real satisfaction, not false, not nothing, real. Achievement has real moments. I'm not here to tell you that any of it was fake, but underneath it, quiet, patient, waiting will be the thing you haven't let yourself name, the gap, the distance, the hollow Tuesday at the center of all of it. Don't deny it. Here's what I learned about what she deserves. She deserves the man who has gone into the difficult interior and come back honest. Not healed, honest. Not fixed, present. Not the man who has eliminated his fear and his failure and his uncertainty, but the man who has sat with all of that and decided to stay anyway. Who has looked into the gap between who he performs and who he is, and instead of building higher walls around it, has started slowly, imperfectly, consistently to close it. She doesn't need the empire. She needs the home. She doesn't need the performance. She needs the person. And here's the thing about becoming that person. Here's the thing that the productivity content and the achievement culture and the optimization frameworks will never tell you. Becoming that person is the hardest work there is. It is more demanding than any external goal I have ever set. It requires more courage than any risk I've ever taken in business or finance or ambition. It requires the willingness to be seen as you are, not as you could be, not as you were, as you are, and to offer that with open hands and no guarantee of what comes back. That is the work, and I am doing that work, not because I am there, not because I have arrived at the finished version of myself and now I am ready to be loved without complication. I am not there. I will not be there. The finished version is not the point. The commitment to the direction is the point. I am doing that work because I understand now what I spent years not understanding, that the life I was building was a monument to a wound. Every achievement was a brick in a wall I built to prove that I was enough, erected around the place where I was terrified that I wasn't. And walls don't love, walls protect, walls keep things out. And some things need to be kept out, but some things, the most important things, the things that make a life rather than a resume, need to be let in. I am learning to let things in. Dear future wife, I know that sounds strange. I know you're here or you're coming, or maybe the distance between us right now is not physical but internal, the gap I've been closing one brick at a time, one Tuesday at a time. I know that wherever you are, whatever shape this takes, what I owe you is not the performance. What I owe you is the truth. I was not ready before, not in the way that matters. I had the external architecture of readiness, the stability, the direction, the goals with timelines, the morning routine, the man who looks ready from a distance. But in the interior, where it counts, where presence lives, where the real relationship happens, I was not there. I was in the control room behind the glass, managing the impression. I am coming down from there, not all the way, not perfectly, not with any promise that I won't retreat sometimes, that I won't feel the old pull toward the walls and the management and the distance, but with the awareness now, and awareness changes everything, that the retreat is a choice and presence is also a choice, and I am choosing differently than I chose before. I am becoming the man who can be in the room, actually in the room, not thinking about the next room, not strategizing about the outcome of this room. In the room with you in the ordinary, extraordinary miracle of two people choosing to be honest with each other in a world that rewards performance over truth. I am becoming the man who can be known without flinching. I am becoming the man who asks for help without it costing him his identity. I am becoming the man who can sit with your silence without filling it with his own noise, who can hear difficult things without going immediately to solution, who can feel without narrating the feeling from a safe managerial distance, who can put his hand on your face in the middle of an argument and say, I don't have the answer right now, but I'm not going anywhere. That's not a man I was. That's a man I am building, brick by brick, Tuesday by Tuesday. And I want you to know, whoever you are, wherever you are, whether you're already here or still coming or somewhere in between, that the collapse was for this. The hollow Tuesdays were for this. The wall of glass and the pressed hand and the question that received no answer, all of it was pointing here, toward the work, toward the willingness, toward the humbling, terrifying, ultimately merciful process of becoming a man who doesn't need achievement to feel like he exists. I exist without the achievement. I am learning to trust that, wait, before you scroll, don't go yet, because I know what you're about to do. You're about to close this and return to the forward motion, the momentum, the plan. You're about to tell yourself that this was interesting, that it was well made, that it moved something in you, and then you're going to quietly, efficiently bury that movement under the next task on the list. I know this because it is exactly what I would have done. But here's what I want to leave you with. Not a challenge you can optimize, not a framework you can implement, just a question. What would it mean just for today, just for this one day, to stop trying to be impressive, not to fail, not to stop working, not to abandon the ambition that is genuinely yours and genuinely good? Just for one day, to let the people you love see you without the armor, to say, I don't know once out loud to someone who matters. To be in a room with another person and actually be there, not managing the impression, not projecting the outcome, not directing the performance. Just there, present, human, real. What would that cost you? And more importantly, what has the alternative cost you? The empire will still be there tomorrow. The goals, the metrics, the systems, they'll all still be there. But the moment you're in right now, this one, this exact texture of this particular day, will not come back. The person across from you will not be exactly who they are right now ever again. And you will not be exactly who you are right now ever again. This is the only moment there is. I lost years of moments to the performance. I don't intend to lose another one. And so I am building differently now. The foundation, not achievement, but truth. Not performance, but presence. Not the question, what does this make me look like, but what does this make me? The altar, not at the feet of productivity or legacy or the external validation I spent decades quietly starving for. At the feet of something quieter, something that doesn't show up in metrics. The willingness to be known, the willingness to stay, the willingness to close the gap, the bricks, not the ones I used to lay, impressive, load-bearing, mortared with ambition and fear. These ones are different, smaller, warmer. The brick of a dinner with the phone in the other room, the brick of a hard conversation I don't escape by going to my head, the brick of I was wrong said without the invisible asterisk, the brick of presence, repeated, chosen day after day, until presence becomes not what I practice, but who I am. This is the home I am building. This is the man I am becoming. And to her, the one who stayed when the performance fell away, the one who said, you don't have to do that here, the one who waited in the silence with the patience of someone who understood without being told that the real person was worth waiting for. Thank you, not for fixing me, not for saving me, not for being the answer to the question I couldn't stop asking. Thank you for being real enough and honest enough and grounded enough to refuse to pretend with me. Thank you for the presence that made the performance feel impossible. Thank you for the gift of being seen, actually seen, and discovering that the real thing didn't make you leave. That changed me. Not in the clean story way, in the real way. In the quiet, daily, unremarkable, utterly extraordinary way. The collapse was mercy. The emptiness was the door, and I walked through it. This is what I'm building now. Come home.